I, 23F, have been dating John, 25M, for almost 2 years now, and I'm starting to worry that our differences might be more significant than I initially thought. We met on a dating app when I was studying abroad in California. I'm originally from a small coastal town in Spain, and he's a born and raised Californian. Our connection was instant, and we spent countless hours video chatting, texting, and calling each other during the first few months of our relationship. I remember the night we matched on the app. I was sitting in my dorm room feeling homesick and scrolling mindlessly when John's profile popped up. His bio made me laugh. It was a cheesy joke about computer programming that I only half understood. I swiped right on a whim, and to my surprise, we matched instantly. We started chatting, and before I knew it, it was 3 a.m., and we were still messaging back and forth. We did long distance for about 8 months before finally meeting in person. Those 8 months were filled with late-night calls, virtual movie dates, and endless conversations about our lives, dreams, and cultures. John was fascinated by my stories of growing up in Spain, and I loved hearing about his Californian childhood. When we finally met in person, it was like a scene from a romantic comedy. I flew to San Francisco during my winter break, and John was waiting for me at the airport with a huge bouquet of sunflowers, my favorite. We spent 2 amazing weeks together, exploring the city, trying new restaurants, and just enjoying each other's company. It felt like all of our virtual interactions had seamlessly translated into real life. Since then, we've been visiting each other whenever possible, and things have been pretty serious between us. We've talked about our future, even discussing the possibility of me moving to the US or John coming to Spain after I finish my studies. Everything seemed perfect, until recently. One of our favorite couple activities is watching movies and TV shows together. When we're apart, we often have virtual movie nights where we sync up a film and video chat while watching. The problem is, I'm incredibly picky about what I watch. Even when I start something I think I'll like, I often end up hating it. Unfortunately, most of the stuff John likes, I can't stand. I grew up in a household where my parents were huge fans of classic European cinema. Our shelves were lined with Fellini, Bergman, and Truffaut films. My weekends were often spent at the local art house theater, watching independent films with subtitles. This upbringing shaped my tastes, and I find myself drawn to more artistic and thought-provoking content. John, on the other hand, was raised on a steady diet of blockbuster movies, sitcoms, and anime. His father is a big sci-fi fan, and John grew up watching Star Trek and reading comic books. His mother loves romantic comedies, so he has a soft spot for those too. But his true passion is anime, something I've never really understood or enjoyed. I always try to give his choices a chance because I love him and enjoy spending time with him, but more often than not, I end up disliking what he suggests. When it comes to movies, it's not a big deal. We can sit through 2 hours of something I'm not into. But John has started suggesting these long TV series, and that's where the real issue begins. Recently, he wanted me to watch this anime series he loved as a kid. It's called Cosmic Ninja Academy or something like that. It has 3 seasons with 60 episodes total. I'm not really into anime, but I agreed to try it for him. We're 7 episodes in, and I just can't take it anymore. The plot seems nonsensical to me, the characters are over the top, and the constant yelling and exaggerated reactions grate on my nerves. I finally confess that I'm not enjoying it at all. John's reaction was not great. He got really quiet at first, then asked if I had even been paying attention. When I tried to explain what I didn't like about it, he got defensive, saying I wasn't giving it a fair chance and that I needed to watch more to get it. He then went on a long rant about how this show had been a huge part of his childhood and how much it meant to him to share it with me. The timing of this is particularly tricky because I'm spending the summer with John in the US, but I have to go back to Spain next month to finish my final year of university. We'll be doing long distance again, and I don't want to spend my limited time with him watching something I hate. I just can't fake enjoyment anymore. It's not like we never agree on shows. John has introduced me to some series that I absolutely loved. There was this British detective show that we binged together last year, and it was fantastic. We've made great memories watching those together. But when I don't like something, I can't pretend. We're currently watching a show I suggested, a Spanish drama series about the Civil War. John is completely obsessed with it, which makes me happy but also a bit confused. He's so into this historical drama, yet he can't understand why I don't enjoy his favorite anime. I would never force him to commit to a show he didn't like. If he doesn't enjoy a movie I pick, I'm fine with. It's only 2 hours, but a whole series is a different story. John insists that I'm not even trying, but I feel like I am. I've sat through 7 episodes of this anime, trying to understand what he sees in it. I've asked questions about the characters and the plot, hoping to find something to connect with. But it just isn't clicking for me. This isn't the first time we've had this issue. Last year, John tried to get me into this popular American sitcom. I watched nearly 2 seasons with him before admitting I found it shallow and unfunny. He was disappointed but seemed to accept it at the time. Now, with this anime situation, all those old feelings seem to have resurfaced. I'm starting to worry that this is about more than just TV shows. Are our different tastes a sign of deeper incompatibility? I love John, and I love the idea of sharing experiences with him. But I'm beginning to feel like we're from 2 different worlds. Our backgrounds are so different. I grew up in a small town in Spain, where my parents run a local bakery. Our home was always filled with the smell of fresh bread and pastries. My childhood was pretty traditional. Family dinners every night, helping out in the bakery on weekends, and spending summers at the beach with my cousins. I was the bookworm of the family, always with my nose in a novel or studying for school. John, on the other hand, grew up in suburban California. His parents are both software engineers, and he was surrounded by tech and pop culture from a young age. He spent a lot of time with his older brother, binge-watching anime and playing video games. These shows aren't just entertainment for him. They're a core part of his childhood memories. When we first started dating, our different tastes didn't seem like a big deal. We were so caught up in the excitement of our cross-cultural romance that we overlooked these small incompatibilities. But now that we're planning a future together, these differences are becoming more apparent. I love how John's face lights up when he talks about his favorite shows. I love his passion and enthusiasm. But I can't help but feel a disconnect when I don't share that excitement. And I know he feels hurt and rejected when I don't enjoy the things he loves. Am I being too picky? Is John being unreasonable? How can we find a middle ground without one of us always feeling frustrated? I don't want to change who I am or pretend to like things I don't, but I also don't want to lose John over something that seems so trivial on the surface. I'm torn between wanting to make him happy and staying true to myself. And advice on how to navigate this situation would be greatly appreciated. Update 1. It's been a couple of weeks since my original post, and things have taken an unexpected turn. I want to thank everyone who commented and offered advice. Your insights gave me a lot to think about. After reading your comments, I decided to have an honest conversation with John about our entertainment preferences. I invited him over to my apartment, cooked his favorite paella, a recipe I learned from my abuela, and we sat down to talk. I explained how I felt about the anime series and emphasized that it wasn't about not wanting to engage with his interests, but rather about finding common ground we both enjoy. I told him about my childhood, about the Sunday afternoons spent watching old movies with my parents, and how those experiences shaped my tastes. I also admitted that perhaps I had been a bit closed-minded about trying new things. At first, John seemed to understand. He apologized for pressuring me and suggested we try to find shows we both like. We spent the evening browsing through different genres, looking for something that appealed to both of us. It was actually fun, and we ended up finding a few promising options. We decided to start with a critically acclaimed miniseries that blended historical drama, for me, with sci-fi elements, for John. However, things took a turn when we started watching this new show. It was a complex narrative that I was really enjoying, and I thought John was too. But halfway through the 3rd episode, John paused it and said he couldn't pretend anymore. He admitted he had been faking interest in the show because he thought that's what I wanted. I was shocked. Here I was, thinking we'd made progress, when in reality, we'd just switched roles. John explained that he felt like he always had to censor his true opinions around me because I was so critical of his tastes. He said he was tired of walking on eggshells every time he wanted to share something he loved. This revelation led to a heated argument. John accused me of being elitist about my taste in media, saying I looked down on anything that wasn't sophisticated enough. He brought up instances from our past that I had completely forgotten about, like the time I scoffed at a popular action movie he wanted to see in theaters, or when I made a dismissive comment about his favorite childhood cartoon. I countered that he was being unfair, and that I had genuinely tried to engage with his interests. I reminded him of the times I had enjoyed things he introduced me to, like that British detective show or the indie game. We played together last winter. The argument escalated, and John brought up other issues I didn't even realize were bothering him. He said he felt like I was always subtly criticizing aspects of American culture, and that I acted superior because of my European background. He mentioned how I often compare things unfavorably to how they are in Spain. The food, the lifestyle, the education system. I was stunned. I had no idea he felt this way. In my mind, I was just sharing my experiences and perspective. I never meant to come across as superior or critical of his culture. In the heat of the moment, I said some things I regret. I told John that maybe his tastes were just immature and that he needed to broaden his horizons. I suggested that perhaps he was insecure about his own intellect, and that's why he was so defensive about his lowbrow interests. John fired back, saying I was stuck up and incapable of enjoying anything lighthearted or fun. He accused me of using my background as a way to feel special and interesting, and that without my European mystique, I was just another snob. We both said hurtful things, bringing up old grudges and insecurities. The argument ended with John storming out of the apartment, slamming the door behind him. He's been staying with his brother for the past few days, and we've only communicated via text. The texts have been cold and distant, mostly about practical matters like when he'll come to pick up some of his things. I'm feeling lost and confused. What started as a disagreement about TV shows has exploded into something much bigger. I'm starting to wonder if our cultural differences are too significant to overcome. Maybe we've been naive thinking we could make this work long term. Part of me wants to fight for our relationship. After all, we've been through so much together, and I do love John. I think about all the good times we've had. Our first meeting at the airport, our romantic weekend in wine country, the way he held my hand when I was homesick during my first American Thanksgiving. But another part of me is wondering if this is a sign that we're fundamentally incompatible. Are our backgrounds just too different? Can two people with such different tastes and values really make it work in the long run? I'm supposed to go back to Spain in just a few weeks, and now I don't know what to do. Should I try to extend my stay to work things out with John? Or is this the universe telling me it's time to let go? The thought of leaving things like this, with so much unresolved, makes my stomach churn. I feel like I'm at a crossroads, and I'm not sure which path to take. My head is spinning with questions and doubts. Is this really the end of our relationship? Can we come back from this? And even if we can, should we? Update 2. It's been about a month since my last update, and a lot has changed. I want to thank everyone again for their support and advice. Your comments really helped me gain perspective on the situation. After my last post, I decided to extend my stay in the US for an additional 2 weeks. It wasn't an easy decision. I had to have some difficult conversations with my university in Spain and rearrange my flight. But I felt like John and I needed to have a face-to-face conversation to either work things out or get closure. I reached out to John via text, asking if we could meet. He agreed, suggesting we meet at a neutral location, a quiet coffee shop we used to frequent in the early days of our relationship. I remember feeling a mix of nervousness and hope as I walked into the cafe, spotting John at our old favorite table by the window. The conversation was tense at first. We both sat there, clutching our coffee cups, unsure where to begin. But as we started talking, things began to flow more naturally. We both acknowledged that we had said hurtful things, and that our argument had spiraled out of control. As we dug deeper into our issues, we realized that our disagreements about TV shows and movies were symptomatic of larger problems. John opened up about feeling insecure about our cultural differences. He admitted that he sometimes felt intellectually inferior to me, especially when I talked about European cinema or literature. This insecurity had led him to be defensive about his own interests. He shared a story from his childhood that shed light on his passion for anime. When he was 11, his parents went through a rough patch and were constantly fighting. John would escape to his room and lose himself in these animated worlds. The characters became like friends to him, helping him through a difficult time. I had never understood the emotional connection he had to these shows, and hearing this story made me see them in a new light. On my part, I recognized that I had been dismissive of John's tastes without really trying to understand why these shows and movies were important to him. I also admitted that I sometimes used my European background as a way to feel superior, which wasn't fair to John or respectful of his culture. I shared with John how growing up in a small town in Spain, American culture had always seemed exciting and a bit intimidating. I confessed that my critical attitude was often a defense mechanism, a way to feel secure in a country that still felt foreign to me sometimes. We spent hours talking, crying, and laughing as we unpacked years of unspoken feelings and misunderstandings. It was emotionally exhausting, but also cathartic. We ordered more coffee, then switched to tea, and before we knew it, the cafe was closing around us. In the end, we came to a difficult realization. While we love each other deeply, we're at different stages in our lives and want different things. John is deeply rooted in his California lifestyle and isn't ready to consider a move to Europe. He's close to his family, especially his younger sister who's just starting high school, and he can't imagine being so far away from them. I, on the other hand, miss my family and culture more than I realized. I miss the laid-back lifestyle of my coastal town. The siestas, the late-night dinners with friends that stretch into the early morning hours. As much as I've enjoyed my time in the US, I can't see myself settling here permanently. We decided, with heavy hearts, that the kindest thing we could do for each other was to end our romantic relationship. It wasn't an easy decision, but we both felt it was the right one. We agreed that trying to force our relationship to work despite our fundamental differences would only lead to more pain and resentment down the line. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of emotions. We spent time together, not as a couple trying to fix things, but as two people saying goodbye to a significant chapter in their lives. We revisited our favorite places, the beach where we had our first picnic, the quirky museum where we spent a rainy afternoon laughing at strange exhibits, the rooftop bar where we had our first kiss. We looked through old photos, reminiscing about our adventures together. We even watched the first movie we had ever seen together in person, a cheesy romantic comedy that we both agreed was terribly written but held a special place in our hearts. These moments were bittersweet, filled with laughter and tears. We talked about our hopes for the future, our dreams and ambitions. John shared his plans to start his own tech company, and I told him about my idea to open a small bookstore cafe when I returned to Spain. It was strange and a little sad to imagine these futures unfolding separately, but it also felt right. Yesterday, John drove me to the airport. The car ride was quiet, both of us lost in our thoughts. As we approached the departures terminal, I felt a lump forming in my throat. We pulled up to the curb and John helped me with my luggage. We stood there for a moment, neither of us wanting to say goodbye. Finally, John pulled me into a tight hug. We held each other for what felt like an eternity, both of us crying softly. As we pulled apart, John wiped a tear from my cheek and gave me a sad smile. "I'm going to miss you, Elena," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'll miss you too, John," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. We shared one last brief kiss before I turned and walked towards the entrance. As I reached the doors, I turned back one last time. John was still there, leaning against his car, waving. It was a bittersweet moment, the end of a beautiful relationship, but also the beginning of a new chapter for both of us. As I sit here on the plane, heading back to Spain, I feel a mix of sadness and hope. John and I have agreed to take some time apart to heal, but we've left the door open for a friendship in the future. We've promised to check in with each other in a few months, once we've had time to process everything. I'm leafing through a photo album I made of our time together. Each picture brings back a flood of memories, both happy and sad. There's a photo of us at John's sister's quinceañera, another of us hiking in Yosemite, and one from the night we first met in person at the airport. It's strange to think that this chapter of my life is closing. I don't know what the future holds. Part of me wonders if I've made the right decision. Maybe we could have tried harder to make it work, but deep down, I know we made the choice that's best for both of us in the long run. As the plane soars over the Atlantic, I find myself thinking about home. I'm looking forward to seeing my family, to smelling the ocean air, to helping out in my parents' bakery again. I'm excited about my plans for the bookstore cafe, about reconnecting with old friends, about rediscovering the parts of myself that got a little lost in the whirlwind of my relationship with John. But I know there will be moments when I'll miss him terribly, when I'll want to share a joke or a story or ask for his advice. It won't be easy, but I believe this experience has made me stronger and taught me so much about love, cultural differences, and myself. To everyone who followed my story and offered advice, thank you. Your support has meant more than you know. I may not have gotten the fairy tale ending I once hoped for, but I'm grateful for the journey and excited for what comes next. As the flight attendant announces our descent into Madrid, I close the photo album and take a deep breath. It's time to start a new chapter. Who knows what adventures lie ahead?